I never thought the people I called family could turn their backs on me so easily. One day, I was their daughter, their sister; the next, I was just a problem to get rid of. They laughed when I was kicked out of the only home I'd ever known. But what happened next? What I discovered after they thought I was gone changed everything. It wasn't just about the house or money, it was about who we really were beneath all the smiles. This is my story. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment like this. Your like and share can carry this story to someone who needs hope, healing, or strength today. Red Heart. Growing up, our family seemed normal, at least, that's what I believed. We lived in a big, old house in the suburbs, the kind of place where the walls hold memories you don't always want to remember. I was the youngest daughter, the one everyone expected to follow the rules, stay quiet, and keep the peace. My parents had high hopes for me, though I'm not sure they ever saw me for who I really was. From a young age, I worked hard. I did well in school, helped around the house, and tried my best to be the perfect daughter. But beneath the surface, something felt off. There was this constant tension, like a storm waiting to break. My mother was distant, cold even, and my father, though loving in some moments, often disappeared into his own world, leaving me to figure things out alone. I remember the quiet nights when I'd lie awake listening to their hushed arguments in the kitchen, the words barely audible but heavy with meaning. I wished I could fix it, wished I could be enough to stop the cracks in our family from growing wider. But no matter how much I tried, it seemed like I was invisible, or worse, a source of frustration. When I turned 18, I had dreams of moving forward, going to college, making a life for myself outside those walls. I thought my family would support me, but that support was conditional, wrapped in judgment and expectation. They saw me as a responsibility, not a person with hopes or fears. One thing I loved about that house was the garden my grandmother had planted years before. It was wild, tangled with roses and ivy, a secret world where I could escape. I spent hours there, breathing in the scent of earth and flowers, imagining a life where I was free. But even in that refuge, the tension followed me. There were small signs, the harsh words thrown when I forgot to do something right, the way my opinions were dismissed in family conversations, the silent treatment when I dared to speak up. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself it was just stress or bad days. The moment things started to unravel was almost invisible. At first, it was little things, an argument about money, a misplaced item blamed on me, doors closing behind me with icy looks. Then, it grew. My family began to treat me like I didn't belong, like I was an outsider in my own home. I remember one evening when I came home late from a part-time job. The house was unusually quiet. My mother's voice, sharp and low, greeted me from the living room. "You're late again. Do you even care about this family?" I tried to explain, but the words fell flat. Instead, I was met with cold eyes and a chilling silence. That night, I slept in the guest room, feeling more alone than ever. Looking back, I realized the cracks were never just about me, they were about deeper problems, things I couldn't fix no matter how hard I tried. But at the time, I blamed myself. I wondered if I wasn't trying hard enough, if I was the problem. Then came the day I was told to leave. Not in those exact words, but in every look, every cold shoulder, every door closing in my face. My family decided I was a burden, someone to be erased. I packed a bag, tears blurring my vision as I took one last look around my room, my sanctuary, my prison. The walls that had held my laughter and my tears now felt like a cage I had outgrown. As I stepped out the door, I felt the weight of all those years of silence, judgment, and broken promises. I was leaving behind everything I knew, but I had no choice. What happened next would change everything. Because just when I thought I was completely alone, I found a secret that turned my world upside down. But that's a story for the next part. Being kicked out was like falling through a dark hole with no bottom in sight. I thought once I was out, the worst was behind me, but the real struggle was only beginning. I wasn't just losing a roof over my head, I was losing my identity, my place, my sense of belonging. At first, I stayed with a friend, couch surfing and trying to keep everything together. But what haunted me most wasn't just the physical hardship. It was the emotional weight of being rejected by the people I thought loved me. Every message ignored, every call unanswered, it cut deeper than I expected. I kept thinking, why did this happen? Was I really that much of a problem? The questions echoed in my mind, mixing with a sinking feeling of shame. I wanted to reach out to my family, to understand, to fix things, but every attempt was met with silence or cold dismissal. What hurt even more was how they seemed to erase all I'd done for them. Growing up, I'd always helped out, babysitting my younger siblings, managing household chores, even working part-time to contribute to the bills. It felt like my efforts didn't count for anything. Like I was invisible until it was convenient to see me as a problem. I remember the moment I tried to bring up my contributions during one of those rare family phone calls. My mother's voice was clipped and sharp. "You did what you had to do. That's all." No gratitude, no warmth. Just a brush-off that made me feel small and unimportant. It wasn't just emotional, practical challenges piled up too. Without stable housing or financial support, every day was a battle. I juggled multiple jobs, worked odd hours, and tried desperately to keep up with school applications and future plans. Exhaustion crept into my bones, but I forced myself to keep going. Still, beneath the surface, the loneliness gnawed away at me. I found myself replaying memories of better times, moments when laughter filled the house or when my family pretended everything was fine. I wondered if those moments were real or just illusions I clung to. The hardest part was the internal struggle. Part of me wanted to give up, to stop fighting for a place where I wasn't wanted. But another part refused to let go, clinging to the hope that things could change, that I could prove my worth, or at least find peace on my own terms. I started writing in a journal every night, trying to untangle the mess of feelings inside me. Some nights, the words poured out like a river, other nights, I stared at the blank page, too drained to even think. But writing became a lifeline, a way to hold on to myself when everything else felt lost. At one point, I reached out to my siblings, hoping they might understand or offer some support. But they were caught in the middle, hesitant and afraid to choose sides. Their silence felt like another betrayal, like I was losing them too. I also found myself questioning everything I'd been told about family, loyalty, and love. Was love really unconditional, or did it have strings attached? Did blood really mean family? The answers weren't clear, and the confusion was exhausting. One day, while sorting through some old boxes I'd managed to grab before leaving, I found a stack of letters, old, yellowed with time, hidden away in a drawer. They were from my grandmother, written years before she passed. Her words were full of warmth, wisdom, and a deep love that I'd never fully appreciated until that moment. Reading those letters felt like a spark in the dark. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I came from a line of strong women who faced hardship and survived. It was a moment of clarity, a reminder that I had strength I didn't fully see in myself. But even as I found that strength, the shadow of my family's rejection loomed large. Every step forward was met with reminders of what I'd lost, not just a home, but a sense of belonging and trust. I began to suspect there was more going on beneath the surface. Things I wasn't being told. Secrets that could explain why my family turned on me so suddenly, so completely. But I had no proof, just a growing feeling that something wasn't right. I kept my eyes open, hoping for a sign, a clue, anything that could help me understand the truth. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't move on without knowing why this had happened, and what it really meant for me and my family. And then, the moment came, a discovery that changed everything I thought I knew. It was a cold afternoon when I stumbled across the secret that would change everything. I was digging through the attic, a dusty, forgotten place I hadn't been allowed to explore much before, looking for some old family photos to remind myself of better times. But what I found wasn't a photo album. It was a thick, leather-bound folder tucked away under a pile of old blankets, marked simply with my family name. My heart pounded as I carefully opened it, dust motes floating in the slanting sunlight. Inside, I found documents, papers that felt heavier than any memory. There were bank statements, legal papers, and a will. But this wasn't any ordinary will. This was the will of my late grandfather, a man I barely remembered but who once held the key to everything we had. As I read through the pages, my hands shook. The will revealed things no one had told me, secrets about money, inheritance, and family promises that had been broken. It became clear why my parents had been so cold, why they had pushed me away like I was a threat. The will stated that the house I grew up in was to be shared equally among all the grandchildren, including me. But my parents had kept this a secret. Instead, they tried to erase me from the picture, pretending I didn't exist. The betrayal cut deep. It wasn't just about the money or the property. It was about trust, about love twisted into something cold and calculated. I sat there, tears blurring my vision, as I pieced together the lies. They weren't just being cruel, they were hiding something they didn't want me to find out. I thought back to all the times I was dismissed, blamed, or ignored. It wasn't because I was a burden. It was because I knew too much, or because they were scared I might claim what was rightfully mine. For the first time, I felt a surge of clarity and anger. I wasn't the problem. I was the target of a plan to push me out, to silence me, to take everything for themselves. I spent hours that day reading every word, every clause. There were other documents too, a series of letters between my parents and a lawyer, discussing how to keep me away from the inheritance. They talked about legal measures and keeping control. It was chilling. This discovery shattered the last illusions I had about my family. The people who had once been my whole world were not the people I thought they were. They had turned their backs on me for greed, for control. It was a painful, bitter truth. But amidst the hurt, I felt something else, a flicker of hope. Now that I had proof, I could fight back. I could reclaim what was mine, not just for the house or money, but for my dignity, my place in the family. I also realized that this fight wouldn't be easy. My parents weren't just emotionally distant, they were prepared to go to great lengths to keep me out. But I was done hiding. Done being silent. That night, I lay awake thinking about what to do next. I knew I needed help, legal help, support, someone to stand with me. But more than that, I needed to prepare myself for the battle ahead, the fight not just for inheritance, but for my voice and my future. As the moonlight filtered through my window, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happened, I would not be erased. I would stand tall, fight hard, and make sure the truth came out. And even though fear gripped my heart, fear of losing even more, I felt a new kind of strength. This was my turning point. The moment when I stopped being the victim and started taking control. But the road ahead was uncertain. What would happen when I confronted my family? Would they listen, or would the cracks turn into a chasm too wide to cross? Could I find peace after so much betrayal? These questions haunted me as I prepared for the next step. And that next step? Well, it changed everything again. The moment I decided to confront my family felt like stepping onto a battlefield I never wanted to face. I knew I couldn't keep the secret any longer, the will, the hidden documents, the truth about what they'd been trying to hide. It was time to speak up, even if it meant shaking the very foundation of everything I thought I knew. I arranged a meeting with my parents and siblings at the family home, the place that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Walking through that front door again was suffocating. The air was thick with years of unspoken resentment, and I could feel their eyes on me, cold and wary. I held the folder tightly in my hands, the leather worn from my grip. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice steady as I began. I found something you didn't want me to see. Their faces tightened instantly, a mixture of shock and anger flashing in their eyes. My mother was the first to break the silence, her tone sharp and defensive. "You have no right to dig through things that don't belong to you." "But it does belong to me," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "This is our grandfather's will. It clearly says that the house is to be shared among all of us equally." My father's jaw clenched. "That will is old, irrelevant. Things change." "No," I insisted, stepping forward. "The law says otherwise. And you tried to keep me from knowing. You pushed me out to keep me away." The room felt colder, heavier. My siblings looked down, unsure where to stand. The family I once thought was a safe harbor was now a storm of accusations and bitterness. For the first time, I let myself show the hurt that had been bottled up for so long. I loved this family. I did everything I could to be part of it, to help. But you treated me like a stranger. You lied to me. You erased me. Tears welled up, but I held my ground. I wasn't here to beg. I was here to claim my truth. My mother's voice cracked, a mix of anger and something I couldn't quite place. "You don't know what you're saying. You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said softly. "You already did that. I'm just finally standing up." The fallout was immediate. Words flew like daggers. Accusations, denials, painful memories resurfaced. But amidst the chaos, I saw something shift, a crack in their armor. Maybe they hadn't expected me to fight back. Maybe they hadn't counted on me refusing to be silent. That night, as I left the house, I felt a strange mix of relief and heartbreak. The family I knew was broken, and maybe it could never be the same. But I had taken my first step toward reclaiming myself. In the days that followed, I met with a lawyer. Holding those legal papers in my hands, I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't known before. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was someone who could fight, who had rights, who deserved respect. But the battle wasn't just legal. It was emotional. I wrestled with feelings of guilt, questioning if I was doing the right thing, if I was being selfish. Part of me wanted to turn back, to forgive and forget. But another part knew that forgiveness without truth wasn't real. I also had to navigate the strained relationships with my siblings. Some stayed silent, afraid to choose sides. Others reached out quietly, unsure how to bridge the growing divide. It was painful to see how much damage had been done, and how much healing would be needed. Through it all, I kept reminding myself why I had started this fight. Not for money, not for the house, but for my dignity, my voice, and my future. For anyone who's ever felt invisible or silenced, this was my stand. But as the legal process began, and the family tension simmered just beneath the surface, I realized this journey would test me in ways I hadn't imagined. The next steps would challenge my strength, my patience, and my heart. And just when I thought I was prepared for whatever came next, life threw me another unexpected curveball, something that would shake everything up again. The days after the confrontation were a whirlwind, a strange mix of professional challenges, emotional upheaval, and personal growth I hadn't expected. Fighting for what was rightfully mine wasn't just about paperwork or legal battles, it was about reclaiming my life from the wreckage my family had left behind. I hired a lawyer who believed in my case, and suddenly I was plunged into the world of court dates, legal jargon, and strategy meetings. At first, it was overwhelming. There were moments I wanted to give up, to retreat back into the safety of silence. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself why I was doing this, not just for the house or money, but for my dignity. But the fight wasn't just external. Inside, I wrestled with waves of doubt and fear. Would I lose the case? Would I lose my family forever? Could I heal from this betrayal? Some nights, I'd lie awake, heart pounding, wondering if I was strong enough. Yet, amidst the storm, I found moments of strength I never knew I had. I leaned on friends who became my chosen family, people who listened without judgment, who offered words of encouragement when I felt like I was drowning. Their support was a lifeline. At work, I threw myself into projects, focusing on building a future where I was valued and respected. It was hard to concentrate at times, the weight of my personal life pressing in. But I discovered a resilience within me, a determination not to let my past define me. Slowly, I started to rebuild my identity outside the shadow of my family's betrayal. I explored new passions, connected with communities that made me feel seen, and took small steps toward independence. Each day was a reminder that I was more than what had happened to me. But the emotional toll was real. There were days when the pain of rejection hit like a wave, dragging me under. I questioned if the fight was worth it, if the cost was too high. Yet, every time I thought about walking away, I remembered the letters from my grandmother, the promise I made to myself, and the truth I uncovered. Through all this, my relationship with my siblings remained complicated. Some still avoided me, caught between loyalty to our parents and their own fears. Others reached out quietly, and we began to rebuild fragile bridges. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was a start. As the court date approached, the tension was almost unbearable. But when the judge finally ruled in my favor, a wave of relief and validation washed over me. I wasn't just a shadow in their story anymore, I had a voice, and it had been heard. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. The victory was bittersweet. The family I once dreamed of having was fractured beyond repair. But I was free to build my own life, on my own terms. Looking back, I see how much I've grown. The girl who was kicked out and laughed at had found her strength. I learned that family isn't always defined by blood, sometimes it's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. Now, I want to share this with anyone watching who's ever felt abandoned or silenced. You are not alone. Your story matters. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the strongest selves. But the journey isn't over. Even as I reclaimed my place, I realized healing is ongoing, a process of forgiveness, understanding, and self-love that takes time. And as I stand here today, I'm ready to move forward, not with bitterness, but with hope. Healing after everything felt like trying to piece together a shattered mirror, each fragment reflecting a part of the pain, but also showing me pieces of who I was meant to be. The battle with my family had left scars, some raw, others faded but never forgotten. Yet, in those cracks, I found light.